We're very honored now to be joined by retired Sergeant First Class Norm Hooten, Delta Force operator, team leader in the battle for Mogadishu. And we appreciate you coming in, Norm, to tell your story. And in the 9.5 minutes we have left, let's start at the beginning. Tell us how you got involved in this mission and how you were appointed team lead.
Well, I had been in that particular organization for about 5 years, and that's about the normal time for a soldier to be considered for a team leader position there. So it was part of a normal career development process to become the team leader. So there were several of us that were team leaders on that particular operation, and we watched it develop from the very beginning to the point where everybody's familiar with the October 3rd. But it was really kind of a random choice of who went on that particular mission, and we didn't look at it as any different than any other operation that the guys were going on.
Now, in terms of your objective and what transpired, refresh our memories from your perspective, what your job was as team leader and what changed to make it the desperate fight it became.
Well, initially we went over there, as everyone knows, to capture Muhammad Aidid, and it became obvious after a very short period of time in Somalia that he had left and he was no longer the primary target. So we defaulted to the secondary targets, which was his staff, his executive staff and his leadership. We had been there for several months and had conducted several operations, but and this one again looked no different than the other ones we had done, and it just happened to be in the heart of his neighborhood and his area of influence. So that was the only thing that really stood out about this one, and everything went according to plan. It was a well planned, well executed operation, and then on the exfiltration, when we were leaving the target, is when things changed quite a bit. And of course, losing a helicopter, now you're no longer going in and getting out very quickly. You're committed to recovering your friends that are on that aircraft.
So the helicopter goes down. You've got to get the wounded, deal with that, and get out of there if you can. What point, and in training, and part of the assessment I'm sure is, when does this become literally a fight for my life? Did that change very quickly? Can you recall that instant when it happened for you?
Well, it really looked pretty much like a routine recovery operation that we'd rehearsed many times. In fact, we'd even practiced this over and over again in training for that particular mission, and we had resources that were dedicated to recovering that aircraft. So we rolled into our contingency of recovering that crew and the passengers on board that aircraft, and we didn't realize how long it was going to take until we got there and saw the severity of the crash. And we had people that were still in the wreckage that we couldn't recover very quickly. So now we were committed there for a long period of time, and we realized that the more time we spent in that city, the more difficult it was going to become to get out, because it allowed them to organize and consolidate their assets on the target as well.
Was there any point when you thought, hey, I'm not going to get out of here?
I never really felt that. I mean, there were times where it was pretty desperate, but I always had confidence in my teammates and in the command structure and in our military. I knew that we had trained extensively for it, and we had the very best guys there. So I never really felt like I wasn't going to make it out. I felt that it was going to be a hard fight, but that we were going to come to it fine.
It was a hard fight. We incurred casualties, and we saw the bodies of American servicemen being dragged through the streets of Mogadishu. All of us in life look back in different situations, and we think back and wonder what could have happened differently. Norm, you've pointed out just how well trained you were, but in retrospect, is there anything that could have been done differently in terms of what you guys were trying to do on the ground, or in terms of assets devoted to the mission? looking back at it now, what in your mind's eye would have made a difference?
Yeah, JD, I've had many, many years, as you know, to look back over this, and there are certainly a lot of things that I would do different personally, and I think organizationally, we learned a lot of important lessons that day, but I do think that the only way you're going to learn those kind of lessons is by those experiences, and knowing what I know now, I'd change a lot of things. A lot of things about the way we trained in those environments, the way we equipped ourselves, the way we organized and assembled that task force would change. But we didn't have all the benefit of all that hindsight back then, so we went into it with the best way we could, you know. But yeah, certainly I would change many, many things.
The military prides itself on after-action reviews. If you had to list maybe 3 things in an after-action review that you thought should be changed, and I'd like to hear those, and have they in fact been changed in terms of strategy and tactics?
Well, I think it's a great question, and I've often said that we learned lessons on that day that helped us in future conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan and other places in this world. But probably the most significant change that we made was incorporating armor into special operations forces, because in the past we always looked at armor as kind of like a conventional tool, and we didn't see the value in it because it looked slower and more cumbersome. And special operations forces always prided themselves on using speed and surprise. But today, almost all of our special operations forces use armored vehicles to move in an urban environment. I think that saved a lot of lives. The incorporation and integration of night vision and all the accoutrements that go with that in fighting at night has really also saved a lot of lives. And those are lessons that we learned on October 3rd.
Norm, what is past is prologue. Now there is debate about sending a mission to Mount Sinjar for the Christians being persecuted there. It looks like we're backing away from such a mission. In your mind's eye, should our military be mounting that humanitarian mission to Mount Sinjar?
Well, you know, I think we're not obligated to do something like that, but that is something that each one of these situations is unique. And as a world leader, and we pride ourselves in being a world leader, probably safe to say the world leader, I think we should strongly consider it. And anytime we can go in and help in a humanitarian way, if we're not going to do it, who else will do it? And you can't just abandon that.
Got about a minute and a half left. Want to focus on life after the Army. First of all, when did you retire, and what have you done since your retirement from the military?
Well, it's been a long journey since then. I retired obviously back in 2001, pursuing another career as a pharmacist, and then I was recalled on 9/11 back to the Army, and then helped the Air Marshals change their organization from a regulatory organization in the FAA to a law enforcement organization. And then I worked in Jordan for a few years, and now I'm back in pharmacy school at Palm Beach Atlantic University.
And speaking of PBA, we want to give you fair enough time here. Time doesn't allow right now, so we're going to ask you to stay through the break. We'll talk about life here and now, probably also revisit this notion of military missions and our military being used in a humanitarian fashion. And you've had some experience with VA healthcare too, so we'll talk all about that straight ahead.
Thank you.
Fair enough. Norm Hooten, our guest. We appreciate his time today, and in view of what is contemplated at Mount Sinjar, remembering Mogadishu today is something very important to do. That's why we're so pleased that Norm joins us in studio. Our conversation with a member of the Delta Force who was there in the battle for Mogadishu, his reflections back on that, where we're headed in the future, and what he's doing personally and why, straight ahead here on America's Forum.